My generation, it was the war on poverty. So when it came as the war on poverty, you had to make room for men and women who have the possibility and the opportunity to change the landfall. And I think I watched that at the same time that we on strike as students at San Francisco State in 1968. It was a major strike, including a coalition of African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, progressive whites, in order to create the first school of ethnic studies.
So I am a graduate of that school, sir. I got my degree from San Francisco State in Africana Studies.
Yeah.
The first college of ethnic studies in the world because of the struggle of the Third World Liberation strike.
You know, it's interesting. The first day in the spring of 1967, we brought, I think it's 67, if I get it, it's just me a year off, 67, and we brought a great poet, Leon Jones, Amiri Baraka. I was just manning the office that day. He came in and he said, "I want some of you so-called revolutionaries to be in these plays." I had never been in a play before. You know, I had never been on stage. In fact, I had never sang in the church choir. I never had, not even a solo, not even. And I went, and something happened. You know, something.
Wow.
I didn't assign that as my as my next move in life, but certainly it was something, and the radical kind of concept prospect around an expression there was something that you know, that charged me and grew me, gave me a point to grow in.
That is incredible. So Amiri Baraka pushed you into theater, but not just theater as a actor, but as a revolutionary actor, as a way to use that as a tool for social change.
Well, I think there were so many things that happened, and certainly you contributed to a number of things, and we're living in the moment itself. You know, we're living in a level of activism, and each generation makes its own history. Robeson says that, and they're defined by that history they make. So in the course of being an actor, you know, doing the plays that I were involved in issues I was involved in was the African Liberation Support Committee. Something that particular moment set the groundwork for me. You know, I remember you know, the plays that came out. The first militant preacher, George Murray, who was Minister of Education of the Black Panther Party, was a militant a preacher. Of course, he is a preacher. He was a real preacher. And I did a play called Papa's Daughter, and that was me being the father of a young girl who was arguing with me over my own choices that I'm as a father and an adult, and the ensuing choices of changing that radicalized her as well. So, I mean, I think there was a period in several communities that in San Francisco, and the dynamics happened. You know, I think after the Nicaraguan, the earthquake defined a great deal of what happened. San Francisco and the Hispanic community is different than L.A. There was a different kind of activism here. In the history, in fact, the first language spoken in California was not English. It was Native people. And it's the first language, Spanish. You know, Texas, all of this was part of Spanish, part of Mexico after the Mexican Revolution and the defeat of the Spanish. Mexico was independent. They were here before the British and American. But people don't understand it, really understand that the layout in its the historical layout and the dynamics that happen. So San Francisco had its own on tension in California. In fact, the Chinese came earlier. Wow, much earlier to the West Coast than Americans did. These are the kind of things you don't really find out in history classes, but it has to say whose story. We would always say whose story we're talking about, and whose story that I think most of my life and my generation, even though you can say whether it matters or not, is that whose story as legitimized.
Very true. Very true.
Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay. Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay.